Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Point and Click. As always, I am Adam Razak,
And I am Jordan C. Johnson.
and today we are going to be talking about Tales from the Borderlands, which is the Borderlands spin-off that Telltale covered back in 2000 and I think it was 15 that this came out, 2015. And today we're going to be talking about the first episode, Zero Sum.
Yes.
So
Zero Sum.
Okay, I guess I'll start this off by saying my history with the series outside of this game has just been kind of like,
Yeah, I played, I think, maybe an hour or less of the first game, and I was like, yeah, no, this is not for me. I haven't cared about anything else outside of this Telltale game.
well, the thing for me is I really like the lore and the style of the game. Like, I like the really colorful, gory, kind of like sarcastic, weirdo space
Sure.
western kind of stuff that it goes for. I just don't care for the gameplay all that much.
Yeah, I totally agree.
But seeing that they were going to do this world but in the format of a Telltale game, that got me really interested, because that was after they had like really this was at the time when Telltale was like for me at like the top of their game with like doing Walking Dead's 1 and 2 and The Wolf Among Us. So I think like I was ready to see where they were going to go next, and this being their next thing, I didn't really know what to make of it at first. I just thought it was a strange decision, but the more I thought about it, the more I was like, you know what? This can, for me personally, this could really work, because if they take
Right.
this style into like a story with these characters that I give a shit about, and not having me shoot everything, that would be better.
Well, also, at the time they announced this, as you mentioned, it was early in the, the Telltale cycle.
Yeah.
So, like, we hadn't really had a chance to get burned out on them, or maybe notice a lot of the flaws that would become more pronounced as they went on.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, you had Walking Dead Season 1, you had Wolf Among Us. I don't remember, Walking Dead Season 2, was that out yet? Maybe? I don't know which one came first, but it was around there. It was like, basically, it was like these four games as, these four seasons as like the starting point for Telltale.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they announced this, I was like, at this point, I was totally on board with Telltale, and I was like, whatever property they want to do, I don't care. I'm in, whatever, regardless. It doesn't matter what it is.
Sure.
And yeah, and I mean, this definitely is a Telltale game. They take that sort of, aesthetic you were mentioning and definitely spin it into what Telltale does. This is definitely a more sort of light and humorous story than they had done up to this point.
Mm-hmm.
Which works. I think a lot of things, as we'll get into, a lot of things about this series work to varying degrees of success. But for my money, I still think this is. I have some issues with it, but overall, this is the only episode of this series that I really like, honestly.
See, and I still think this one is by far like the weakest one out of them all. Like,
So what's your problem with this episode?
my problem with this episode is that I find the first half of it kind of boring.
That's fair.
And it's strange to think that I'd grow into these characters so much, like to the point where like I consider these characters like one of the best ensemble casts in any game like ever that I can think of. And for me,
See, I'm like completely the opposite.
Okay.
Where I like this game. I think this episode works partially because you're still kind of getting to know the characters. So I don't really like the characters, honestly, and I'm not crazy about them even in this episode. But that's okay because at the time you're like, well, this is the first episode. We'll get into it more as it goes. You'll get to know them better.
Yeah.
But also just that this episode I like mainly because this episode feels like it's almost like a self-contained movie, and it feels very epic. There's a lot of scale to it. It builds and changes a lot. I think the ending, like the finale sequence on the racetrack, is definitely like the biggest I've seen in any Telltale game, like the biggest scale action set piece they've done.
oh yeah,
And I love it. I still think that part holds up really well. Like I said, I have problems with other things about this, but that's the first thing that drew me to this. Like, there's a real sense of sort of cinematic atmosphere in this episode. Just even evident in little things, like before they go into the arena for the race, like they're kind of on this cliff, and there's like this open space, and they're watching these, you know, these guards, and it just feels like like Star Wars or something. There's like a sense of, you know, open space and atmosphere and pacing that is very cinematic and very appealing to me.
Well, you mentioned the Star Wars reference. The town that they go to in the beginning feels a lot like Mos Eisley.
It's like an R-rated Star Wars.
Yeah. It's, I don't know, like, but for me, even now when I play it, I don't think it was as boring as like the first time I played it, because I remember when I first went through this, I think I almost fell asleep during the first half, which was really concerning for me, because at the time I was like, holy shit, Telltale. Like, I was like all things Telltale back then, but yeah, this one just didn't do it for me when I first played it. And even now, I like it a little bit more nowadays, but I still think it's okay. I think the first half is like definitely like the weaker part of it, and the second half, when they finally get into the Mad Max finale, that's when it becomes really good, and it's like, okay, this I'm enjoying. Everything like before that, like, and I get that they need to do the setup for the both sides, like they need to like introduce both Fiona, Fiona and Reese. They need to talk about Sasha. They need to get into Vaughn. They need to get into, I think it's Valerie, her name is, the third wheel for Reese's group. But it's, I don't know. Like, it's just the way they write these characters in the first episode, I just didn't find them particularly interesting. Because I don't think that camaraderie that I enjoy so much in the next episodes is there, and that's that's appropriate, because they don't like each other at first, but I just don't think their interactions together are particularly memorable or entertaining.
Well, I think this is somewhat telling as to why we disagree on this series overall, because like the camaraderie you're talking about is not interesting to me at all. I don't think it's done all that well. I don't really like the characters very much, so I'm not really interested in sort of that humorous camaraderie dynamic that they're going for. So for me, why I think I like this episode more than the subsequent episodes where that becomes more developed is that, again, it's another case of Telltale not allowing you to choose how you want to play this. I mean, you're essentially forced into this sort of camaraderie dynamic. Whereas for me, what's interesting, some of the seeds that are laid in this episode that I think could have gone somewhere really interesting are the idea of Reese as this sort of who actually, maybe he actually is this sort of power hungry Hyperion dick. You know what I mean? Maybe he does decide to kind of pull away from the group and go for the power a little bit more on his own. And there are like seeds of that peppered in here where you're not really sure how he's going to play it or how you feel about these people or what you're going to do going forward. And I would have loved to see that get explored more. And that's where my problem with the series comes in, because this episode kind of lays that groundwork for maybe you could go there if you want to, but you're never allowed to. You're forced into that camaraderie thing, which to me feels like very trite and much less interesting.
See, I get that, but it's for me, like, the enjoyment I get from the camaraderie, like in this one case, like just really overwhelms a lot of potential problems I can have with this series, because I just enjoy it so much.
Right. But again, like we've talked about so much on these other episodes, it's just like, that's great, but it shouldn't be the only way to play it.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, if someone's not feeling that, like, if you're not getting the enjoyment out of that camaraderie, you shouldn't have to play the characters that way. Because, again, like, that's the whole point of a branching narrative, is to have options. And there really isn't much in the way of options in this series.
It's more like... It's more like they wanted to make this like really lighthearted comedy, but I don't even know why they like wanted to bring up this like the darker elements to it, because it just feels out of place in most areas. Because I think there's, like you said, there's temptation there for Reese to become like a gigantic asshole, but they don't really go for it. Like, considering
Right.
that you can like self-destruct Loaderbot, which is what I did on my first playthrough. And I didn't know
That's
that
what
he
I
would
did this
just
time.
he didn't know what I'd do when he'd come back, but like, it's weird to just have him self-destruct and then he comes back and then he just sticks with you the whole game, and it's like all right, well, I wanted to have you killed, but you're still here, and you're, I mean, he says, like, you know, he's not cool with you or whatever, but that doesn't come through in the later interactions that you have with him, and there's really nothing that
There's just
like
a lot of
markedly
stuff
changes that.
Right. Like, I think I get what you're saying about the darkness stuff feeling out of place, because really, why put it in here at all if you're not going to do anything with it?
Yeah.
Why set up Reese and, you know, his as possible as like having this Hyperion background where he clearly has some type of ambition for power in that role, and then just never allow you to go down that road at all? Like, it's just abandoned, and it's like, well, it's just a game about friendship. It's like, really? Then why are we even seeding this stuff?
Yeah.
Why are you dangling this carrot and then just taking it away?
Choice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I wish there were some.
Choices, I guess, with this episode. Now, the one choice, and I'm jumping like way ahead, that I found to be the most interesting out of them all is the whole Felix situation, which that, like, if there's one character that I actually really liked during this whole episode, it's Felix. And even
Is he the caregiver guy?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. That is actually the one choice I really like in this episode too.
Where it's so basically Felix betrays Fiona and Sasha at the end and wants to take the money for himself, and you're given this choice whether to shoot him and then warn him about the case being rigged with a bomb. Like, you could either tell him, like, oh no, Felix, watch out, it's got a bomb, and then he'll throw it away and he'll live, or you can just let him, you can like both shoot him and let him open up the case to get blown up. It's an option, and it doesn't have like huge ramifications if you decide to let him live. It just gets you access to like one of the most iconic characters from the series in the final episode. That's really the only thing that it does. Which,
so how do you play this scene generally?
My first time I shot him and I had him blown up. My second time, because I wanted to see what would happen, I just like told him to throw away the case, and I didn't shoot him. So I guess this time as well, if I remember correctly, because it's been a month since I played it, I think I did let him live on this playthrough.
Yeah, I shoot that bitch every time. Fuck that guy.
I don't blame you. It's
That's the one part. That's the one like satisfying moment in this episode. Like a satisfying choice for me in this episode, because like he has this thing like, you're not gonna shoot me. Like, don't even pretend. And you're like, fuck you. You're gonna get shot. And he just looks completely shocked.
Yeah.
And like heartbroken. It's like, fuck you. You do not have the right to be heartbroken, you dickhead.
yeah. Yeah, besides that,
Which I guess I guess you could also make the argument with that though, that it's sort of another instance of what we talked about with Batman, where the game keeps like telling you about the importance of this relationship you're supposed to have with this character from your past, but because you never lived it or really witnessed it yourself,
Sure.
it's not really something that's felt. So that choice, you could argue, maybe it doesn't have the sort of importance and weight that it should, because as a player, you don't really have any connection to this guy. Like, there's no built relationship there. So your only reference for this is this guy that you have supposedly known is supposed to be taking care of you, just betrayed you and tried to steal from you. So why would you feel anything but anger and like, just, being done with this guy?
Yeah.
Sort of like in Batman, it's like, all you keep hearing is that your parents were these corrupt, horrible people, and there's like evidence for it, but you're like not allowed to really have that reaction because, you just keep being told that they're your parents, and no, I'm sure they're innocent. But as a player, I'm like, why am I sure they're innocent? I don't think they're innocent.
Yeah.
Why do I have to defend them? So it's another case of tell and not show.
Yeah.
I think.
It tries. It tries. And like minor moments where you see Felix talking to Sasha, or it's mostly Fiona that gets the screen time with Felix, but it's not enough, which is why like I'm glad that they just got rid of him even if you let him live, he just does not show up until the last episode. Mm-hmm. And by that point, I had like forgotten that he was even a thing in this series.
Yeah, I didn't even remember that he came back.
Yeah. Well, it's only if you let him live that and if you choose him for the final mission in the last episode, he'll come back and he'll be like, oh yeah, I was hoping you wouldn't shoot me because I made out some like deal where I would like spare you guys something if I just took the suitcase. And I was like, okay. And I was like, okay, all right.
That's stupid.
Whatever.
So one thing I will say I think is really problematic in this episode and in this series is when they try to introduce more gameplay elements than there usually are in Telltale games. Mm-hmm. And none of it works, in my opinion. Like, they try to introduce currency so you can, buy different things, which is just such a worthless dynamic. And it's also like, where do you even get currency in this episode unless you're doing, like, a replay or something? I mean, I never, like, have money to buy the other options. I don't know. Like, and I just don't care. It's like, is this really necessary? It just feels like a pointless gamey distraction. So just sort of like, also too, like the action sequence in the town with Loaderbot. Mm-hmm. I think feels like very awkward and stilted. It doesn't work like as an exciting set piece. I think it's just sort of paced weird. Like they have to give you time to press buttons, and the music cues are kind of quiet and weird, and the animation's a little awkward. Like none of it works for me. Like I just, when Telltale is trying to be a video game, I always feel like they're at their worst.
I like them a lot more in later episodes. Like all like the quick time action sequence stuff. I like that a lot more, particularly in like the last 2 episodes. I think it's when it really gets good, because in the older ones, I agree, where the animations in particular are sometimes just downright terrible when it comes to the decisions, like what you can do, because the game, again, it's like that Telltale engine. It can't keep up with like what you're doing. It can't keep up with the player input.
And it's also, yeah, and I mean, it's also pointless, because like if you fail, you just start over.
Exactly.
I mean, why even bother with this if it's not really like you can change that much in the way it plays out or anything. Like it just feels like a half-assed idea.
Yeah.
It's like if you want to, build a game with these kind of video game elements in addition to the dialogue choices and stuff, I feel like you got to kind of build it around that from the start. You can't just kind of insert these half-assed sequences that just, in my opinion, just take you out of the main thrust of the episode.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, yeah. I agree in respect to the like the Loaderbot stuff and the currency. I think the currency it's just like a reference to the Borderlands series. That's all there is to it. Just kind of be like a winking nod, but besides from like one instance where you can like take money off some dead guy's corpse, I can't remember a single other time where you can get enough money to buy like the higher priced mask before you go into the arena.
Right.
Like I played through this game like 3 times and I can't fucking remember any of the other times. I don't know where they are.
Like who even cares too? It's just like it's just such a pointless addition.
Yeah. It's just like a silly little cosmetic thing. It's just like whatever. I get a different mask. Hooray. It's like whatever.
Yeah.
The one now I do think when it tries to become a game with the final fight in the arena, I think that's when it gets a lot better.
Yes.
It's almost like
I agree.
It's almost like they had to improve the timing and the animation with this, because like there's just so much going on at once that if they didn't, it would just like destroy the whole thing. Like it would just become this mess. And I don't know why they decided to like put so much effort into that and then neglect like the other ones. Like it's really just inconsistent in this particular episode with how fluid and entertaining these action scenes are.
Yeah, I like that scene definitely is a step above like that loader bot sequence
Yeah.
or anything. I mean, it just that finale in this episode is very impressive. I think that finale stands among the best things Telltale has done.
I don't know if I'd go that far, but it is easily like one of the best things in the series. I'm just not sure I'd say like of all time with Telltale.
Sure.
Because it is the point where I like perked up. I was like, okay, here we go. Now I can get into this. Now this is fun.
Yeah, like I said, it definitely has a scale that I'm not sure I've really seen in any other Telltale game so far. It feels much larger and much more epic than most Telltale games typically do.
Yeah.
Like, and it's the kind of thing I wish they would get better at, like incorporating in other games. Like the toward the end of Batman, they kind of hinted at this idea of like the city falling into anarchy and there being like this big class struggle.
Yeah.
But like it's never really explored or shown. I don't know if maybe they just don't have like the budget to animate all that or something. But it just becomes very contained. Like you're just kind of told that it's happening and you just stay in rooms.
And you get a
know
bunch
what I mean?
you get a bunch of floating eyes and mouths punching each other.
Yeah.
I think the only time I've seen Telltale do something like this big, I think might be the Minecraft game. Like, because that's the
true,
one where
actually.
it's like you think Minecraft, you think like, oh, you're just a bunch of like Legos and blocks and shit, but it's like, no, there's some large scale stuff in those games.
Yeah,
particularly
that's something I actually.
In the God damn it, in the final something episodes.
Right. Yeah, that's something I actually really appreciate about that series, especially toward the beginning. Like, it really feels like a big epic adventure, and I think setting it in this sort of weirdly blocky animated Telltale universe, I mean Minecraft universe, I should say, kind of allows them to get bigger than they normally would. Because they can, I think they can sort of cut corners on how the world's going to look. I mean, it's all just a bunch of squares,
Sure.
And that really works to its advantage. I mean, I think it's like the second episode where the giant monster is attacking the world, and you have to like go into this portal to another dimension. Like that's a pretty epic set piece.
Yeah.
Like that definitely is on par with what's going on in this episode.
Yeah.
I think. I think, as we'll talk about, I mean, Minecraft gets a little less memorable as it goes, but I definitely appreciate that about it in terms of its atmosphere.
Yeah, even in some of the other episodes and like that DLC pack that they did, some of them are like really good in terms of creating like these big memorable set pieces, which
Still haven't played those yet.
which I mean like a few of them are really good, like but there's one that's like the worst thing Telltale's ever done, but it's surprising considering it's like Minecraft, but
Right.
it just works for whatever reason. They decided to do it not with Batman but with Minecraft. It boggles my mind.
Yeah, in a weird way, it's Minecraft. Telltale Minecraft has always reminded me a bit of something I talk about a lot on this show, which is Mass Effect, because it just really has this sort of feel, this kind of world hopping adventure where you're saving the entire universe from this big unstoppable force.
Yeah.
And you have this like kind of close knit team, and you're going after this villain who started all of this. Like there are a lot of parallels. Yeah, I think in general, I think I might like the Minecraft series a bit more than you do, but as I said, it definitely has issues as it goes.
Yeah. Well, it's my thing with the Minecraft series is that I wish it had just stopped after those initial four episodes. Like, just have that be, all about the Witherstorm, and just end with with like, what dying. But like that would have been fine. But then they have to go on like this other thing where it's because Microsoft owns Minecraft, they have to have a season pass for a fucking game that already has a season pass, and it's like, all right, how long are you gonna drag this shit on? Because I know people like Minecraft, but it's like, okay, no thanks. I'm fine with just these initial 4, but me being I just played them anyway.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, there's okay. In terms of getting back to Borderlands, there's one thing about it that they sort of set up. I'm not sure how much it works. Is this they sort of try to get into this idea of storytelling and perspectives and what that means, and they set up like, you know, perspectives on a story as a theme that they're going to work out through the series.
Yeah.
I'll just say right now, I don't know how much they actually do with that, or that really goes anywhere. I feel like it's another thing they sort of, I think it's something they sort of, again, they see the possibility of and then take nowhere.
Yeah, because I remember them like boasting about it before it even came out. They're like, oh, we're going to have this thing where the 2 characters will argue with each other over whose perspective is right, and some of these characters will exaggerate more than others. That only happens in just that one episode. It's like never done again.
And it does nothing.
Yeah.
Right. It's even when they do it, like it's worthless. It adds nothing to the episode.
I mean, it's funny. It provided like the couple of laughs that I had in the beginning, just to see what was it? I think it was Reese like blowing August's mind and having like August like weep on the floor. I thought that was just funny. And then they never do it again after that.
Right. But even that, like setting up this idea of like this theme of differing perspectives, as if it's going to be some kind of like Rashomon sort of thematic exploration. I mean, just to use it to like get some laughs. What a waste! Yeah. What a waste of an opportunity that is, especially coming from a developer called Telltale, who all they do is like tell stories that allow players to change how they play out. There's so much possibility there for thematic exploration that they just waste.
It's disappointing. That's like as much as I like the series, that's one of the things that always has bothered me about it. Just the loss of potential in that particular area, because that could have made it so much more interesting if they had brought in, you know, like clashing perspectives and like even more of these exaggerations, but have it be like this story where you don't really know who's telling the truth. But the problem with that is like you have to get to the reveal of who the stranger is eventually, and I think they probably decided like this framing narrative only works in the short term possibly, and then they go, well, I guess we're not going to have them, because then we'd have to like create these like wildly different scenarios where these characters probably wouldn't be trusting of each other, and it would make no sense to have them come together again, and it's like, let's just get rid of it. And I mean, and I think the idea of like the story changing perspective when you're playing between Reese and Fiona, like that's an interesting idea. And again, it could kind of get at some of the stuff that Walking Dead Season 2 was doing, where, at least for me, I kept feeling like my loyalties were changing and I wasn't sure how to feel about the people I was with. And, you know, if they change the perspective like that every time, where maybe when you're playing as Reese, you feel a certain way about him and Fiona, and then you switch to Fiona and all of a sudden maybe you don't like Reese as much, and now you feel a little differently about Fiona. Yeah. But, like, they don't really do anything with that. It's just, at the end of the day, it just kind of comes down to that sort of, it's all sacrifice for fun camaraderie, which is all this series goes to, and, like, I get why you like it, but for me, I think it's the biggest mistake they could have made. And that's fair. I completely understand. It's, for me, it's like having this be the first series they did with like multiple protagonists. They don't really do anything with it compared to how they they do it with like Game of Thrones, where sometimes the choices you make as different members of the Forrester clan will like impact the others, but they don't really do that in Tales from the Borderlands, because that would, again, it's all told via flashbacks, so it's like, it just, I guess framing it in that way for them to like bring it forward to the present, I guess would have just been too much work for them, I guess. I guess that's maybe the reason.
It kind of feels like that's what it comes down to a lot. Like, it's either it's either that they, don't want to or don't have the resources to put that kind of work into it, or they just aren't thinking of it in those terms. Like, I hate to say it, but most of the time I feel like they're just not thinking in those terms, and they just have their own set idea of what they want things to be, and design the game only to that, and don't allow you to choose anything else.
Yeah. The one thing I do really like about this episode is that, like, the little hidden trivia bits you can get with Reese's eye. I think that's very, as someone who is a fan of the Borderlands style and aesthetic, it's nice that they bring in just like little hidden bits like that, where it's like little sprouts of like humor that they're good at doing, even though I don't like the gameplay of Borderlands. That's the one thing I think they're good at in that series, is that they constantly just bring in not just like these big, like, obvious belly laugh moments, but just like small little things that you can like easily miss, that you have to like look for. And I like that, because that kind of is like it like adds another layer of interactivity to this, where you just observe it via like this like sarcastic encyclopedia that Atlas has written into Reese's eye. It's cool. I like that bit. I wish there was like more of it, but it's what's there. I think is fine.
Sure.
Can't really think of anything else to talk about this episode with.
Yeah, I think that's about it for this one.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's kind of light on content. It's more just like it's a very contained narrative, and it just kind of changes scale and location a lot, which is its biggest draw. But like in terms of actual content and ideas, I mean, it's pretty limited.
Yeah, and I think that's part of my problem with it. It's like it's a lot of standing around and talking, which that, considering how much I like Telltale's writing in this series, should be great. But I just don't think the setup for these characters is really all that interesting. I think it's like when they finally start to go on the road trip to getting this vault, that's when it becomes fun. It becomes almost like a buddy TV show in a sense, complete with that's what I wanted to bring up. I fucking love the title sequences in these games. Like, they get better as they go along, but I think like the one in this episode is okay, but the next one where they bring in like that slow motion shot of them like flying out of the car in the second episode, and then the third one where it's almost like the title sequence to a TV show set to them like just like hanging out and cracking jokes on each other. I think I love those. I absolutely just like love those title sequences. To me, they're like the best part of the game.
I do like the title sequence in this episode a lot too. It definitely, again, kind of gives you a sense of the sort of like lonely atmosphere of the planet, and like it feels very cinematic. It feels. I mean, as we've talked about before, like, I'm not sure that's always what games should go for. Like, it's not so much experiential in that sense, but it's definitely cinematic. It has a great atmosphere, and that's what I like about this episode.
Yeah, it uses like licensed music very well. Like, if there's one point where it works, it's in these like little like 2 to 3 minute title sequences that either are like there to introduce the characters, or they're there just to like really set up just how like big of a situation they're getting into is, which I think like really in like episodes 4 and 5, when it's like much more like of a somber thing, that's when it like really hits me like, okay, this is some like big stuff that they're doing, which I think is awesome. I think every Telltale game should have something like this, and they kind of have ever since they did this series. They kind of have been doing that, and I think and like, just to bring up Guardians of the Galaxy, I think it works a lot better here than it does in the title sequence to their Guardians of the Galaxy game, which is ironic considering Guardians of the Galaxy is like the thing that like kicked off this whole obsession with like licensed 70s and 80s rock music. So
yeah.
Fuck that game.
Are we on to top 5 now?
I mean, is this in your top 5? I'm curious.
No,
Okay.
it didn't crack mine. Mine
neither.
stayed the same.
I won't say I'd say this is not at all the worst one that we've covered for me.
No, definitely not.
Like I as much as I'm complaining about certain aspects of it, I do like it. I like it a little bit. I think it's all right. It's all right.
Sure.
It's if someone were to say, like, put a gun to my head and say play it, I'd be like, okay, whatever. Like, but that's in like
Yeah, it's I as I've mentioned, I like this episode quite a bit. It just didn't quite crack the top 5 for me.
sure. I think my number one is and forever will be Walking Dead season 2 episode 3, which is
Yeah, same
which is
here.
amazing. All right. Next time, I guess we'll go on to the next episode of Tales from the Borderlands.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
And Jordan, where can people find you?
Oh, I am at @5th_opinion on Twitter.
And I am at Razorblade Mango on YouTube and on Twitter. And we have our Twitter handle, which is at a Telltale Pod, capital A, capital T, capital P.
Which doesn't matter.
Yeah. I like to say that anyway. Something about the way.
Oh, I've noticed.
I like that. Alrighty. See you guys next time.